Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on three really fundamental concepts: power, authority, and legitimacy. Concepts that are constantly shaping our world, maybe in ways we don't always fully grasp. Our mission today is to take the sources you've shared and, pull out those key insights. Think of this as your shortcut, maybe, to understanding the invisible forces at play in governments, organizations, even in your own daily interactions. We're not just defining terms here. We're trying to uncover how they combine, or sometimes how they crumble, to shape everything around us.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how often people use these terms almost as synonyms, but they each have really distinct meanings and crucially distinct relationships with each other. So we're going to try and clarify those distinctions today, give you a solid framework, hopefully, for thinking critically about how influence actually works in any system, really.
Okay, great. So let's start at the beginning then with power, the rawest form of influence, maybe. What is it at its core?
Right. Power, at its simplest, it's the ability to get someone to do something they might not otherwise do. It's about imposing your will on others, controlling their behavior, sometimes even against their own preference. Now, when we talk about political power specifically, we're looking at the ability of government institutions, like the executive branch, the legislature, the courts, their ability to influence citizens, to comply with laws, with decisions. And this power, it isn't just held by individuals. It can be groups or, entire institutions. And it's exercised through formal channels, sure, like a government office issuing a decree, but also through more informal means, like persuasion or maybe a well-placed influence campaign. The actual sort of flavor of political power really changes depending on the political system you're looking at.
Okay, so it's definitely not just one thing then. Power isn't monolithic.
Right.
What are some of those fundamental characteristics or distinctions that define its different facets?
Absolutely. That's key. One really big distinction is hard power versus soft power. Hard power is, well, it's about compulsion, using force or coercion. Think military might, economic sanctions, threats, or even, direct rewards for compliance. It's leveraging tangible stuff.
Okay, the stick and the carrot, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you have soft power, and that's about attraction, persuasion. It's getting people to want what you want, often without them even realizing they're being influenced. Think about a country's cultural influence, its popular movies, its universities attracting global talent.
Much subtler.
Very subtle, but potentially very effective. Another crucial point, power is always relational. It inherently requires interaction, at least two entities, right? One exerting influence, the other responding. It's never in a vacuum.
Right.
And power always has a purpose. It's got this goal attainment feature. It's exercised to achieve something specific. And here's something interesting. Just the capacity to compel obedience. Even if that power isn't constantly being used, just having that ability can be a profound source of influence.
Okay, so the potential alone shapes things.
Precisely. It shapes decisions before a single command is even given. That potential. This also makes power instrumental. It's a tool, right? A means to an end used to accomplish those goals. And ultimately, the absolute essence of power is just influence. That ability to affect actions, decisions, beliefs.
Okay, that paints a much clearer picture. We know what power is, how it operates. But where does it actually come from? I mean, the sources you provided list quite a few origins. Is there one dominant source, or is it really a mix?
Oh, it's definitely a mix of real patchwork and a pretty fascinating one. I mean, in democracies, we often point to elections, right? Citizens choosing their representatives. That's huge.
Sure, the ballot box.
But that's just one path. The Constitution itself is a fundamental source. It doesn't just define how government works, it sets limits on power. That's crucial for legitimacy, which we'll get to. Then there's control over resources. This is massive. Anyone who can threaten to withhold vital assets, oil, water, military gear, essential supplies, they hold immense sway.
Economic leverage.
Exactly. And related to that is just sheer economic wealth. Financial assets allow individuals or groups to influence policy, shape debates, even without holding office. Think about lobbyists or major campaign donors.
Right.
Power can also derive simply from appointment. Officials get power from whoever appointed them. Or it can be hereditary, passed down through families, like in monarchies or some traditional systems. You also see delegation, where one body grants authority to another, like Congress delegating rulemaking power to an agency.
Okay.
And obviously there's military might. A strong military lets a state protect itself, project influence, coerce others. What's becoming increasingly important too is technology. Access to sophisticated tech surveillance, cyber capabilities, give states new ways to monitor and control. But technology, like social media, can also empower citizens, drive political change from the bottom up.
That's a really interesting duality there.
It is. And finally, never underestimate charisma. A leader's personal appeal, their ability to inspire loyalty, uh, generate support just through their personality.
Yeah.
That can be an incredibly potent, though sometimes unpredictable, source of power.
Wow, okay. So it really is a diverse landscape. It's not just where power comes from, but also the kind of power it is. How do our sources classify these different types, describing how power actually shows up, how it manifests?
Yeah, the classifications help sort that out. You have political power, which is the power wielded in politics and government, decision-making. Economic power, obviously, stems from control over economic resources. Money, capital, means of production, affects who gets what. Social power comes from your position within a social group. Think about influencers, community leaders, anyone who shapes norms.
Okay.
Then positional power. This is based on a formal role or title. Manager, CEO, judge. The power comes with the office itself, contrasted with personal power, which derives from an individual's own characteristics, charisma, as we said, or expertise, connections.
Right, the person versus the position.
Exactly. Then there's coercive power, based purely on the threat or use of force, punishment, the stick.
Yeah.
Expert power, which comes from having specialized knowledge or skills that others need or respect. Think doctors, engineers, scientists. And lastly, informational power. This is about having access to valuable or exclusive information. Knowing something others don't gives you an edge.
Got it. That's a really useful breakdown. So, okay, we've spent some time unpacking power, the raw ability to influence. But, often people comply without direct force or immediate reward. What makes people willing to follow? That seems to bring us to authority, right? Is that the missing piece?
That's precisely it. You've hit on the core distinction. Authority is generally defined as the legitimate use of power. It's the right to make decisions, give orders, enforce rules. But the absolute key word there is right. It's based on acceptance. People comply because they acknowledge, they accept the authority figure's right to command them.
So it's power plus acceptance equals authority.
In a nutshell, yes. It's power that's seen as rightful, as justified. Authority is kind of the instrument through which legitimacy, which we'll discuss next, is actually put into practice.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So if authority hinges on this acceptance, what different forms does that acceptance take? How has it looked historically, and how does it look now?
Well, the sociologist Max Weber, who thought a lot about this, identified three main sort of ideal types of authority. First, there's traditional authority. This is based on long-standing customs, traditions, beliefs. People obey because, well, it's always been done this way. Think of hereditary monarchies or maybe some forms of tribal leadership.
Okay, rooted in the past.
Exactly. Second, there's legal rational authority. This is grounded in a system of established laws and procedures, formal rules. Legitimacy here comes from adherence to these legal principles. Think modern democratic governments. Officials get their authority from the Constitution, from laws, not from who they are personally or who their parents were. It's impersonal.
Right, the rule of law.
Precisely. And third, Weber identified charismatic authority. This stems from a leader's exceptional personal qualities, their unique appeal, a compelling vision that inspires devotion in followers. People follow because they're drawn to the leader's personality, or they genuinely believe in their, perhaps, extraordinary mission.
Like some revolutionary leaders, maybe? Or
Religious examples, yeah. And Weber was careful to note, these types aren't always mutually exclusive. They can coexist in a society, and societies can shift, transition from one dominant form to another depending on history, social changes, political upheaval. Which does raise a really important question. How do societies navigate these different bases for leadership? What makes one form stick or seem more stable than another?
That's a perfect segue, actually, because if authority is the legitimate use of power, the right to wield it, then where does that fundamental rightness, that acceptance, truly come from? That seems to be the essence of legitimacy itself. Let's dive into that.
Exactly right. Legitimacy is that crucial acceptance. It's the recognition of argument, or any governing authority, really, as rightful and lawful. This recognition needs to come from its own citizens, primarily, but often also from the wider international community. A government seen as legitimate is considered to have the mandate of the people to rule.
Mandate. Like the power given by voters in an election.
That's a key source of it in democracies, yes. That power given by the electorate. But legitimacy isn't just a one-time stamp of approval you get on election day. It's dynamic. It can be quite fragile, actually. It's a currency that has to be continually earned and maintained.
Okay, so it's foundational, but also needs constant upkeep. What are the key factors then? What actually builds and sustains this critical legitimacy over time?
Well, there are several factors that are really key. First, the Constitution. It's the foundational document outlining principles, laws, how the government should work. Operating within those constitutional boundaries is vital for legitimacy. It's the rule book.
So, adhering to the agreed upon rules.
Yes. And closely related, especially in democracies, are free and fair elections. This is absolutely crucial, ensuring citizens can vote without fear, without fraud, and that the results genuinely reflect the people's will. That process builds immense legitimacy. Ideology also plays a big part. When a government's actions generally align with the core beliefs, values, and goals of its population, that fosters acceptance. People feel represented.
Right, a sense of shared purpose or values.
Exactly. Beyond that, just plain good governance is incredibly important. Managing public affairs fairly, transparently, being accountable, fighting corruption effectively, providing decent public services. This builds tangible trust day to day. People see the government working for them, or at least fairly.
Competence and fairness matter.
Absolutely. And tied to that is good leadership. Leaders who are seen as competent, honest, genuinely concerned for people's welfare, they profoundly enhance legitimacy. In diverse societies, respect for customs and traditions of different communities is also important. Making various groups feel included and valued helps maintain overall legitimacy. Ultimately, you need popular support, majority approval, trust in the government and its decisions. It's hard to claim legitimacy without that broad backing.
Makes sense.
And finally, popular participation. Giving citizens real opportunities to be involved in decision-making, to have their voices heard beyond just voting. That enhances the sense of ownership, the feeling that this is our government, which boosts legitimacy significantly. And, if we connect this back to the bigger picture, understanding these factors helps us evaluate the strength, the stability of any governing body, whether it is a huge nation-state or even, say, a local council or a company board. It shows what truly allows them to endure, to function effectively over time.
Okay, so putting it all together, we've journeyed from power, that raw ability to influence, to authority, the accepted right to use that power, and finally to legitimacy, the underlying belief, the acceptance that makes the whole system hold together. It really is a complex chain, isn't it? But wow, incredibly vital for understanding how our world works.
It really is. And this deep dive, I think, really underscores that while power can often be seized or taken, true authority, and especially lasting legitimacy, those are almost always granted. They have to be earned and constantly re-earned. Which brings up maybe a final thought to leave people with. In today's world, information spreads like wildfire. Traditional institutions face constant challenges. What new factors might be starting to really influence a government's legitimacy, or maybe even erode it, beyond the classic factors we've just discussed today? Something to think about.
That's a really potent question for our current moment. A lot to chew on there. Well, we hope this deep dive has given you a clearer lens, a better framework maybe, for seeing these forces, power, authority, legitimacy at play in our societies, and perhaps even in your own life. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.